Which battlefield should you buy in 2025? Today I'll be discussing which battlefield I think you should buy in 2025 and whether or not any of the 4 battlefields which I will be discussing in this video are worth it. Hey, I'm Rib, and today I'll be discussing between Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5, and Battlefield 2042, but which one is right in 2025. Today I'll be discussing 3 different categories in which they may succeed in and which they may not. And these categories are graphics, gameplay, and overall how each one holds up in today's age, 2025. So let's begin this video. So the first battlefield I'm going to talk about on this list is Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1 came out in 2016 and it was fairly popular at the start, and still is to this day. So for popularity, it is still very, very popular to this day. It's very, very active servers, at least in North America that is. I'm not sure for the rest of the world, but in North America, it is very popular. And this game, I think, holds up very, very well in 2025. Graphics-wise, I would argue that it is arguably better than Battlefield 5's graphics. It's just for me, but I'm just saying I think Battlefield 5 wasn't that great for graphics-wise. We will see. I will talk about it later in this video, but the other categories it might be better in, or worse in for that matter. So back to Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1, I think, is a very, very good game. It was very popular on release. I think EA really tried with this game. I can tell they did, because graphics-wise, everything seems really good. I still think the graphics are amazing to this day. I could hardly tell it's a game from 2016, and when I showed it to a friend, I told them, hey, this is a game from 2016, just, you know, they're, wait, really? They were surprised that it was, because it's just so graphically good that they couldn't believe that it was. But just a reminder, I am having these settings set on ultra preset with that, what was it, 200% resolution, so it is upscaled a bit to look, even though this is a 1080p recording, it will look something like a 1440p recording, just for you know. But anyways, graphics-wise, I think very good. Gameplay-wise, extremely good too. I'm surprised how smooth the gameplay is. It's not choppy at all or anything. It performs very well to my expectation. And overall, I think it holds up very, I would say extremely well in 2025. Now let's move on to the next game. So next up is Battlefield 4. And Battlefield 4, as you could probably tell from the video clips, isn't very good graphically. Although it could be a little bit better in these clips, I just couldn't get it to be 200% resolution. For whatever reason, it's not very well optimized for PC, and when I set it to 200% resolution, it gets between 40 and 60 FPS, and it's very choppy and slow. It's not great. It's playable, but it's not great for these video clips. I don't want you guys to see some choppy, messed up gameplay for slightly better quality. It is surprising though, seeing how Battlefield 1 does get between 60 and 90 FPS when at 200% resolution. As you can tell, it is better optimized, and for graphics quality, I would have to give this one to Battlefield 1 so far, since it does hold up better, since it was better optimized and it looks overall better. Even though this is a 2013 game, it does look surprisingly good for how old it is. I still have to give it to Battlefield 1 for that, since it just looks so much better, and I guess that's that. But for gameplay-wise, Battlefield 4 feels very slow to other games. It feels very slow, obviously, because it's an older game. It's 2013. I mean, come on. Games didn't have any sliding mechanics yet, for the most part. You'll have to let me know in the comment section if you know any games, any shooter games to be specific, with any sliding mechanics, but Battlefield 4 does not, and that makes it feel very slow. Plus the sprinting is noticeably slower compared to the other games on these lists. So I would say it's arguably worse than Battlefield 1 in today's age. Also considering that the servers there aren't a ton of servers for North America that are full. And sadly, there are a bunch of servers that have faked their player count, try and get more players. Obviously that doesn't work, and that just ends up with a bunch of people being frustrated since they can't find a full server to play on, and that really sucks, to be honest. But let's move on to the next Battlefield game. Okay, now we're in a game of Battlefield 2042. For graphics preset, I am using medium settings. Again, this game is much harder to run than the other games, so I am using the medium preset. Though, when I'm not recording and it's easier to run, it does look much better on the ultra preset, just so you know. But that does get me very, low frame rates, and that wouldn't be good to show you guys on this video. So graphically, this game beats Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 4 for obvious reasons, since it is newer and it looks much better, though it is not as well optimized. And I would say Battlefield 4 not Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1 still looks very, very good for how old it is. I mean, it's comparable to Battlefield 2042 if I'm being honest here. It does look very, very good. So I would give this one to Battlefield 4 2042, but just slightly, just barely over the edge, since it just looks slightly better to me. It doesn't look insanely better, it just looks a little bit better. But overall gameplay wise, it does have new, faster gameplay mechanics, kind of like what you see in modern Call of Duty. To be specific, Call of Duty 2019. It reminds me a lot of that game just because of how quick the sliding mechanics and gun mechanics are. So gameplay wise, it's very quick, which is nice, but it's also at the same time, it's kind of like I don't want to be trying this hard all the time just to get a few kills. And Battlefield 1, I think, does that much better. It gives an in-between of fast and slow, which I like. I prefer to myself a lot. Some of you guys might prefer the opposite, but that's just my preference here. So for gameplay wise, in my opinion, I will have to give this one to Battlefield 1. But for graphics wise, this one wins. And overall holding up, it's hard to debate because both games are very popular to this day. Even though Battlefield 2042 had a very bad upbringing and it wasn't very popular at all at the start and it's very buggy and glitchy, EA did fix this game a lot and it is much better looking and much better feeling to this day. So for gameplay wise, I'm going to give this, not gameplay, holding up for servers and popularity, I will give this one to Battlefield 1 just because I think there are more open servers and better connections in North America, at least for me. Let's move on to the next Battlefield. Okay, the last Battlefield on this list is Battlefield 5. And I would argue that this one is the worst looking in terms of graphics wise. It doesn't look great to me at all. It feels very grainy and it just doesn't look great. It's slightly better than Battlefield 4, I would say. It just doesn't look great for a game. And this is quite disappointing because this game is quite new still to this day. I would argue, was it 2016 or 17 it came out, something like that, along those lines. And it's very new and it looks worse than, I would say, actually I would even argue that it looks worse than Battlefield 4 just because of how everything moves around and how the gameplay works. I would argue that on this list, it is the worst looking Battlefield on this list, and that gives it, I guess, the worst rating for graphical quality. But for gameplay wise, I would also argue it's the worst on this list. EA was just experimenting with the gameplay and really fast mechanics at the time, and when they didn't really check this game to make sure it was actually good gameplay or sliding mechanics, and it feels very choppy to me. Even with me getting 100 something FPS on medium settings. Another thing, it's not very well optimized. This game is not very well optimized for PC at least, and it just feels very choppy and very slow. Even at my high refresh rate monitor with 160 something FPS, this game feels very choppy and slow and buggy to this day, and I would argue it's one of EA's worst games. But for popularity wise, it is more popular than Battlefield 4. So for popularity wise, it is not the worst on this list, but it's also like, I feel like Battlefield 4 deserves more love since this game is just arguably worse in my opinion. Everything feels worse and it just doesn't, accuracy, the gun accuracy, I will argue this one doesn't seem good at all. Like, there were no red dots in World War II. What was EA thinking with this one? I just don't understand this one, and I would argue it's the worst Battlefield of all time. I would even go that far to state that, make that statement, that is the worst Battlefield of all time. And it's sad to see because EA really didn't try with this one. They didn't try and fix it like with 2042. This would be better than 2042 if EA hadn't tried and fixed it. But since EA fixed 2042, this game is worse than it. It's worse than Battlefield 4, worse than 1, worse than all of the games, I would argue. And that leaves us to my final result. I think, in my opinion, that Battlefield 1 is the best Battlefield on this list for 2025. Also to mention that sometimes Battlefield 1 goes on sale for ridiculously low prices. Like, I picked it up for $3 and that was amazing. And I argue that has the best gameplay, the best performance, best optimization, best everything. But let me know what you think in the comment section, you guys. It would be really great to hear your opinion on this video. And with that away, I'll see you in the next one if you stay. See ya.